And now joining us to discuss the road ahead for convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester and his partner, Dr Nandipha Magudumana. We are joined by Elton Romeo Hart. He's an attorney at the University of Johannesburg Law Clinics. Elton, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. One can say that when we look at the road ahead for these two, especially dealing firstly with Thabo Bester, he was declared dead. How and where does this new legal battle then begin?
Now, obviously, if one looks at the Thabo Bester and his shenanigans over the past couple of months, first he's an escapee from a detention center, which means that there is certain charges that can be leveled against him, and DCS or G4S, who was running the facility, can be the complainants there. But then it's also now like in masterminding the escape, people who helped him, the dead bodies that popped up, and now we hear that there was like two sets of dead bodies, one allegedly being the father, then one being dead, Bester again, and then we heard also that there was rumors that he died again in Tanzania. So there's a whole lot of falsehoods that came out, and also distrust amongst DCS police and as well as jigs. So this is a whole complicated mess, but they need to keep Thabo Bester alive so that we can actually get to interview him. The police needs to interview him so that we get to the bottom of it, or he gets to be standing trial so that we actually know what really transpired, who was involved in this master plan of him and actually making that escape possible.
And I suppose South Africans are looking for all sorts of answers. So many questions being asked. This arrest now, this rearrest, what does it mean, for the truth eventually?
No, obviously, for me, looking at it from a legal perspective and being a legal practitioner, looking at it, there was too many people that was involved here. There was guards, there's officials, and I would even go as far as saying not just any official, high-ranking officials, and it might even at some stage get to, you might have some sort of political influence here on this case, because you cannot, and this is now linked to these fancy events that he was running from a prison cell, that you had people, high-profile people in our society that attended these events. So this person was well connected. So what will still come out is going to be weird and wonderful revelations. And I just hope that whoever is having custody of Thabo Bester, they keep him alive so that we as South Africans get to the truth and the bottom of the story. But as I look at it now, there is still a lot of water that needs to flow into this river or into the ocean here, because Thabo Bester, he needs to be added to the people that's currently appearing in Bloemfontein, the ones that will be appearing again on the 17th. He needs to be added because he is involved in them. He should not be kept. Yes, he's a high-risk prisoner, and I believe that on Monday he will appear via virtual, but at some stage he needs to stand trial with them and be tried with them for masterminding the escape and also the other crimes that was listed, like corpse violation, and not once but twice, and actually even to go as far as the murder charge that could be for the one person that was burned in his cell and which with a blunt force injury to the head that died. So there is a lot of things, and this road is still going to get very, very muddy for SABC, jigs, as well as DCS, because I can also pick up that during the interviews today in Parliament, there is a lot of distrust between these three units.
And Mr. Hart, even when we continue, you already speak of he needs to appear alongside those who have also now been arrested. What happens to his former charges? And what new charges is he most likely to face now that, he escaped from prison? He then, of course, claimed to have died. He left the country. He's now back. And of course, we now know that there's the evidence coming out from this inquiry that there are more bodies. What more charges is he likely to face, also on the back of the charges that he already has against him?
One looks at first, one of the first and obvious ones that comes up is murder or culpable homicide, because culpable homicide would be a competent verdict for murder. If we cannot most probably charge him for or find him guilty on murder, because there's bodies that was now already floating in the river, that was burnt in his cells. Who killed those people? If we cannot find him guilty of murder, then most probably will look at culpable homicide. And obviously, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, she will also be a co-perpetrator or a accomplice or an accessory after the fact. The father, as well as the G4S officials, because that body had to come into the cell. Where was that person killed? Was that person killed in the premises of MMCC? Outside, we need to investigate, but it's murder or culpable homicide. Then he escaped from custody because he was a sentenced prisoner. That on its own is a charge, escaping. Then he was violating immigration laws because he had he left the country without proper documentation, and also he was found in possession of false passports of people that is not remotely him, with just his photo. So there is also perjury charges. They're obstructing justice, defeating the ends of justice. And also now the warrants of arrest that was issued, now there also you can also have further charges added there pertaining to certain immigration laws that was broken. So there's a whole host of things that needs to come, and then one needs to just see the evidence. And we don't know at this point in time, because there's also revelations that some of the prisoners in the Mangaung facility was already threatened to say that they will be killed if they talk. So maybe one can even add their charges as intimidation of individuals, or threats or intimidation of their lives. So, and also the mother of Dr. Nandipha Magudumana also said Thabo Bester at some stage threatened them, and that's why they left the house. So that threats can also be added. And I believe the brother also makes some revelations about that, but them also, they might also be added to this case as people that can be seen as accessories after the fact, or even accomplices, because they knew that he was out running the streets of Gauteng and Free State, and they did not divulge this information to authorities.
Coming to Nandipha, the accomplice here, and many are also even speculating and saying that she's the mastermind behind, the escape of Thabo Bester. How much trouble is she actually in?
Nandipha just threw her own life away. Her life is down the drain. I don't even look at her as an accomplice. I look at her as a co-perpetrator. Because for a co-perpetrator, you don't need to commit the crime. You just need to have the same mindset as the person who's actually doing the actual deed. Then you can go into that boot of being a co-perpetrator, because you are planning together with him how the plan will work, although you indirectly not or directly not executing the actions, but your plans that you actually help plan how it will work, putting things in place, makes you a co-perpetrator of the entire plan to escape the bodies, the dead bodies that rocked up, even people that got murdered, even the events that was scheduled from prison, where he actually hosted events, acting like he's in New York. That on its own, it's also violation of Correctional Services Acts, because this person cannot have this type of internet access to actually host an event. And then you also bring in DCS as well as G4S, because DCS is an oversight role over DCS, over G4S. So they need to also be somehow held criminally responsible. And eventually, because we speak about the victims here, this man was running on the streets, and DCS, G4S, and the police, it's confirmed now that they had this information, and they did not even alert the victims of this man running the street. What if he found one of those people? He could have killed them, or maybe he could have killed another person. They did not care about the public interest. It was just about them protecting themselves, and they had like 6 months to cover their tracks, yet they did not do a good job.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. That is indeed, one of the guests that we were speaking to now. His name is Elton Romeo Hart. Just giving us an insight in terms of what more we can expect when that case resumes, especially these new charges that will now be pinned on Thabo Bester.